So, hello, for those who don't know me, I'm Daniela Sioni, and I have been in the Toronto film and television industry for 30 years. This is my 30th year in the business. I'm 51. I graduated film school in 1991. I went to York University, and I graduated with a lot of, well, for me back then, it was $40,000 in film debt. For me back then, with inflation, that's actually a lot more, right? Um, so it was heavy because when I graduated, I came from poverty. I lived at Jane and Finch. I had this heavy student debt. I had parents who did not support my dream of working in film. I'm Italian Canadian, and they were dead set against me working in the film business. So I never had any support from them. So it was, I remember that time, and I remember how badly I needed someone to talk to me about the years ahead. I do speak at different film programs all the time. And this year I noticed, I spoke at George Brown this year. I think that was the only one I hit this year. But anyway, I noticed a despondency. I noticed like a kind of fear and worry in the students that I had never seen before. And I don't know if it's the pandemic. It's probably the pandemic, not knowing what you're going into, probably also with a significant student debt load. But there's so much good things I have to tell you about what the size of the fandom. My friend who's now the head of the Directors Guild, her motto was know the size of the fan you're walking into. Yeah, you're walking into a huge industry, a very busy industry, busier than it's ever been. When I graduated from York, I graduated in the middle of a recession. There was a recession all the way through to 1993. So there wasn't a fraction of the work that there is now. How many of you, write in the chat, how many of you already know what you want to do in film? And if you do, like, name it, like, I want to be a DOP, I want to be a director, I want to be a writer, I want to work on set, or write, I don't know if you don't know. I'm just really curious because I didn't know when I graduated. Write in a sitcom room. Anna, that's great. Phoebe, I do. You don't know, not sure. Okay. I didn't know. I thought I wanted to be an editor, TV writer. Oh, great. I'd love to produce one day, writer, director, script supervision, more and more. Jesse's in my class. Melissa, want to be in a writer's room long-term? Yes. Well, the good news is I'm going to tell all those people who want to be writers to really go for it. I'm 51 and I'm really starting my writing career in an amazing way. I wanted to be a writer for the longest time. I wanted to be an actor. I did work as an actor for a while. It's not the greatest living, especially when you look like me. But it was, I did a lot of the things. Okay, I'll just go through my journey so you can understand where I've been and why I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. That's okay. I saw you can watch the recording later. Some people are having connection issues. So when I graduated York, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be an editor. I was really shy to say I wanted to direct because I didn't think I wanted to direct that badly. I had won this major award for directing. I won the National Apprenticeship Training Program, which I think still exists. It was a program with the Academy of Canadian Cinema and Television, and they gave it to 10 film graduates across Canada. And I had one for directing and editing. And I put both on my application because in the 80s and the 90s, it was pretty much beaten into every female student that you are not going to be a director, or if you are going to be a director, your life is going to be really hard, and all of that. And it was actually true of the industry back then, not really as true of the industry now. People, if you do want to direct and you're anybody, female, person of color, back then all of us were told to like know our place and all of that. Now it's like, no, you follow your dream, right? You've got to obviously strategize your way to get there because you've got to survive, you've got to pay back debts. Some of you, you got to pay your rent. My rent's pretty expensive even now in Toronto. I've owned places before, but I don't own anything right now. So when I graduated York, I was too shy to say I wanted to direct because I don't think I did back then. I think I wanted to act, and I didn't come out as an actor till I was close to 30. But I was too shy to say it. I didn't think I was pretty enough. I had all kinds of, I was so, you've probably, if you've seen any of my talks, I'm very talkative, I'm very extroverted now, but when I was your age, I was extremely shy. I was really, had low self-esteem. I was really shy. I was very poor, all of the above, right? So I didn't come into my own until much later into my career, which, by the way, is totally fine. You'll blossom into what you're going to be at your own, in your own time. But I think kids today, you guys are hopefully a lot more encouraged to state your opinions and your ideas and express yourself, so that most of you won't be in the position that I was when I started. So when I started out as an apprentice editor. So through my apprenticeship program, I went to the National Film Board and I thought, okay, I'll be an editor. I loved editing in film school. It was so social. And, because we edit our projects, we were all together, rooms beside each other. When I got out into the real world, I realized how isolating it was. I guess I'm half introvert and half extrovert. I didn't realize how much I needed people around me. And so I went to my mentor in the apprenticeship program. By the way, my apprenticeship program paid me like minimum wage, right? If you're able to get into an apprenticeship program nowadays, they pay about $15 an hour. It's not a lot of money, but getting paid to train on the job is great. There's a few. Are any of you in apprenticeship programs? Put in the chat if you are. There's only very few around. NBC has one, Disney has one. They're really centered on BIPOC applicants, because we're trying to balance the industry to get much more, to get people of color and women and all kinds of diverse categories that were not welcome in the industry before into the industry now. So okay, no one's in an apprenticeship. But anyway, that was my path. I was not happy. I was not fulfilled creatively. I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew by doing it that I didn't want to edit. So I asked my mentor what I could do. And she said, there's a student film in Kingston, like a Queen's film, shooting next week, and they need a script supervisor, and they're even paying like $100 a day. Do you want to do it? And I said, Script Supervisor, what's that? And I honestly didn't know, because in film school, and I'm sure you guys have faced this, most of you, some of you probably have, there's a whole bunch of jobs that, like, really high paying jobs in the film industry that they don't tell you about, like first AD, script supervisor, production manager. Like, there's all kinds of really, really high scenic artists, property master, all of that. A lot of those jobs we didn't even know existed, because in film school, we had a director, a producer, actors, a writer, right? I always wrote since I was a kid. I constantly wrote, but it never occurred to me that writing could be a lucrative profession. And I can tell you, in hindsight, I have, like, now this 30 years of hindsight, my schoolmates who went into writing right after graduating, they all had wonderful careers. So there was Robert Cooper, who is head of the Stargate universe. He went to school with me. James Hurst, who you might, if you follow me on YouTube, I interviewed James. He's a big showrunner in Canada. And they went into writing right out of film school. So for those in the chat who said they wanted to write, I would say, like, go for it. It's going to be hard at first, but not for long. And we'll talk about specific strategies at the very end. But I just want to say that, does anyone here want to be a DOP? If anyone wants to be a DOP, I would say get out there and shoot stuff. Don't worry necessarily about working your way up through camera. So yeah, I didn't know what a script supervisor was. I took the job, I got to set, and it was, for me, it was the perfect job for me at the time. It's a key. There's certain positions in film that are key positions, and most of the departments, you kind of have to work your way up into being a key. So you would start, if you don't know what you want to do, often they say, become a production assistant. I'm one of the few people that would advise you against that. I would say, don't become a production assistant. You'll be a PA for a long time, probably, unless you're very lucky. And does anyone here want to get into the commercial industry? If you want to get into commercials, I would say starting as a PA is great, because they're much smaller crews and you can move up much faster. But to pay the $750 fee to join the DGC's trainee AD program and be a PA. I mean, they're very, very well paid, actually. When I graduated, PAs were not as well paid. Now in the DGC, you can be paid over $400 a day, which is a great starting wage, right? So yeah, I would, unless you specifically want to be a first AD, I would caution you against or unless you don't know exactly what you want to do yet, I would say in those cases, be a PA and then get on set. If indeed you want to work on set, there's also many jobs in post-production and there's many jobs in the writing room, right? The most jobs are on set though. So when you're so for me, I jumped into it. So by 3 years after my graduation, I found myself in a union, which is if you're going to be a film technician, so not a writer or a director or a DOP, but or a producer, but most of the other jobs, most of the other really high paying jobs on set, you want to be in one of the 2 unions. In Ontario, there were 3 when I graduated: ACFC, NABET, and IATSE. I got into ACFC within 3 years. Once I started, in my case, script supervising, I fell in love with it, and I really didn't stop working, even though it was during a recession. I still had a backup job back then. So back then, it's not so much a thing now anymore. We used to temp. So we would temp in offices. When I say we, I mean actors and people who worked in film, because temping was the only way that we could, the only job that gave us flexibility. If you work at I have a student who, until he quit to be a full-time script supervisor, he worked at Cineplex as a bartender, like at Scotiabank Theater. So jobs like that, it's really, really hard to book time off. They were good to him, thankfully, but a lot of retail jobs, you couldn't do that. So a lot of us temped so that we could say, oh, I'm gone tomorrow, I got a show, right? There's not that many jobs today that you can do that in. I teach a bunch of things. One of the things I train people how to do is start online businesses. So I have young people training how to make a living online when they're, but you got to figure out what it is that you're going to be able to have guaranteed income in when the film industry dies or between jobs. Now, the good thing about you guys is you're not graduating in a recession. You're graduating. So the film industry goes in waves, right? They never taught us this in film school either. It's so, for me, I graduated down here in the recession, and in about 1997, we were here, which is great because by 1997, I had so many credits. I was hitting all the big union shows by then, right? You guys are up here. You're coming into the industry at the height of the industry, at the busiest it's ever been, especially if you are here in Ontario. Most of you, or all of you, I think, are in Ontario. If you're not, put it in the chat. I think everyone here is in Ontario. So Ontario is exploding, right, with work for many reasons. Netflix has just built a hub here, but they've been shooting here for 3 years now. Every studio comes here for so many reasons. We have really, really strong film crews, actors, and infrastructure for film. So if you're thinking of moving anywhere else, I would say the best cities in the world to work in film production are Toronto, Vancouver. Yes, good. Sydney. Yes, Vancouver is a great, very busy. Atlanta, Los Angeles, and New York, right? So those are the 5 in North America, but that's not to say there's not many other production centers. There are. It's just that those are the ones, if you're trying to build your career, those are the ones you want to live in. So you guys are in Calgary. All right, Phoebe, I forgot you're in Calgary. That's harder. How's it going? I'm going to ask you later. Calgary's tougher, but they're getting busier this year. I heard there's a lot coming to Alberta, more than usual. Actually, every Canadian province. I had a call from PEI. They're building the industry in PEI, and they're expecting it to become full-fledged in the next couple of years. So that's exciting news because that was a province that never had work. Anyway, you guys are graduating up here. So you're coming into a place where you can write your own ticket pretty fast. And when I say write your own ticket, you can negotiate. You don't have to volunteer for a long time, if at all. Whatever job you're going to do, at first, you're probably going to either work for a low wage, like I did on my first script gig when I made $100 a day, or my editing apprenticeship where I made minimum wage, or if not fully volunteer, just for, I would say to any of my students, just for 1 or 2 projects. Don't do it for much longer. And in fact, I don't think you will have to do it at all this summer. If you're ready to go to work this summer, the work is out there. But yes, if you have a dream of being a director, but you have to pay off this debt of whatever it is, 50 grand, whatever your student debt is, and plus you have to make your rent, that you're not going to probably be paid as a director at first. You might find a lot of corporate gigs and, just places that will hire you for smaller jobs until you can make your name in drama or comedy or whatever it is you want to do. Yeah, that was a wake up call. When I was working at the NFB, one of my other mentors was a documentary director, and she called me into her office and said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, I don't know yet." And she said, "Well, I just want to tell you the reality of being a documentary director." She said, my reality is that I work for the NFB. I'm lucky enough to work for the NFB. Most people aren't. And she said, because of that, I get a salary of about $1,000 a week. Sorry, back then it didn't sound horrible, but the moment I started working in script and really started earning a lot more than that as a script supervisor, it really struck me how much of a disparity there is between what documentary pays and what drama comedy, long form pays. Once you get into a union, you're looking at $3,500 to $5,000 a week as a key. Now that's as a key. Many departments, you work your way up to being a key, but script supervision is the only department where you start as a key. So you are a key. You're the only person in your department. So, I was able to actually pay off my student loans. My first union job. So my first union job was the worst TV show in the world called Tech War in 1993 with Bill Shatner. And it was a 9-month gig. Nobody wanted to work on the show, which is why they hired me. I basically walked into the union office at ACFC and said, "I'm really tired of working non-union." Back then we would get $300 a day flat as a key. And now the flat starts at $350. It's not that much more, and it's 30 years later. So non-union is a tough slog, but it's where you start, right? And most of you will not even have to work 3 years before you get in a union. 3 years is the average in regular times, but you guys are in these times, right? So if you're totally lost and don't know what to do, but you hang around the film industry and just try to get on set wherever you can, you're going to stumble on what you want to do probably pretty fast, but you got to be on set to do it, right? So if PA is the only job you can get, go for it, be a PA and see and observe all the other departments and get to know the people who hire in film are the production managers and the producers. Directors sort of are the head of the set, but they don't hire people. So it doesn't necessarily help you if you know a lot of directors. The other thing I found is everyone you go to film school with, they're going to be your allies and your peers for years to come. So don't take for granted the relationships you've just made in film school. That goes for everybody. I mean, I didn't even go into writing until over 20 years into my career, and I'm still friends with the people who were showrunners who we went to school with. So you're all each other's resource. I do want to say that if you guys aren't already aware of that, you're going to see each other going up into your different professions pretty fast. Sorry, I know I'm being a little bit all over the place. I thought I'd be really super casual, but I have so much to say. I'm kind of jumping around. Okay, so for me, I got into my first union job 3 years in. With that job, I was able to pay off my debts, put 10 grand in the bank, and go on a European trip and backpack through Europe, which for me was huge because I was poor. I'd never done that before. So it was like everything to me that I was able to do that, and all solved with one show. Now, the problem with that, you guys are going to find you start off maybe in non-union and very soon get into higher paying gigs. And depending on what your field is, you'll get there faster than other people or not. You will start to see these massive paychecks. And I have a different talk that I'll email everybody if they're interested on work-life balance in the film industry, because it gets into the realities of the lifestyle. The lifestyle is pretty intense. You already know this, but I'll reiterate in case you don't. Days on set are at least 12 hours a day. With COVID, they're trying to roll it back to 10 hours a day, and many shows have been able to do that. But post-COVID, they'll probably go back to, and I say 12 hours, that's the minimum. I've done 24-hour days in my career. Someone asked me how many 24-hour days I've worked. They're like, "Isn't that illegal?" I'm like, no, I've done 3 24-hour days in my 30-year career. So they're rare, but not impossible. Most days are in the 12 to 16-hour range. So it's a wonder I don't look older than I than my age, right? But the reason is once I hit my 30s, once I hit 37, I had a cancer scare. I didn't have cancer, but I had a tumor removed and they thought I had cancer. So many people Oh yeah, this is something I need to tell you that is in that other talk, but I'll tell it to you here. The average age of death in the film industry, we were told by an insurance adjuster for the IATSE local in Winnipeg, because when ACFC died, it died in 1997, we all joined IATSE. And the same in Winnipeg. And in Winnipeg, the insurance adjuster let it slip that the average age of death for a film technician is 54. I can't remember if he said 52 or 54, but I'll say 54 because that's already shocking. So knowing that statistic, and by the way, it's anecdotally, yes, too young. That's right, Norma, way too young. I don't want this to be a downer talk, but I do want you guys to know the reality so you can plan your lives accordingly. When I was in my 20s, I worked endlessly. Like I worked all year round. I did take a lot of trips because once I had the income, I would take a lot of trips. I would treat myself to travel because that was my thing. And I think you have to be able to treat yourself without going too crazy. Yes, very, very sobering stat. I mean, a lot of things in film include that stat includes things like suicide and mental health. We have a lot of a higher than average suicide rate, I would say, just anecdotally from my union brothers and sisters. So it's not only things like cancer. And the reason, obviously we were humans, I don't think we're made to work so many hours, right? With different shifts, because that's the thing when you're on, especially when you're on, let's say a TV series, they have to get their show in, in the can. We used to say when we were shooting film, they have to get their show shot, and it's got day scenes, night scenes. You're going to start at like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. on a Monday and start at maybe 5 or 6 p.m. on a Friday. Your body is just going nuts. It really rearranges. It does a job on your health. And just all that shift work. So that takes years off your life. Doing the shift work takes years off your life. The impact to your family can be great. So I never wanted, I mean, not that I never wanted a family, I never wanted kids, but the people who did have kids, I honestly don't know how they did it, but people did it. It's possible. But the divorce rate, now this is an anecdotal statistic. I didn't hear anyone say this except other people in the union, and I couldn't, prove them wrong. The statistic with divorce is 95% of film technicians get divorced. I couldn't disprove that because everyone I know has been divorced or never married at all. I'm divorced too. The hours take a toll on families. So I'm telling you this not to freak you out, but more to say you can start balancing your life and just making plans strategically when you're young. So balance your dreams. If your dream is to direct, don't spend your life being a PA. Right? Do a few shows to get your feet in the water, to get your connections, but really get out there and direct, make your movies. If you want to write, same thing, get out there, try to be, the entry-level job in a writer's room is the script coordinator. Another way into writing, if you can't get a script coordinator job, is become a producer's assistant. There's only 2 jobs on the floor on a film set that are non-union right now. And that is producers. Well, there's 3: assistant to the producer, assistant to the director, which is different from director's assistant. It's like the personal assistant to the director, the personal assistant to the producer, and a cast assistant. So if you can get on a film set in any one of those 3 jobs, they're non-union. They are not going to pay very well, but you are going to be potentially the assistant to the most powerful people that you can know in the business. So a lot of people I know who wanted to be writers, they started out as a producer's assistant. You do have to have the skill of knowing final draft. You're often doing script revisions and things for the producer. And the producer is the one with the power to say, hey, get she or he to be our story department coordinator, et cetera, right? So that's a hot tip for those who want to write. If you can't get a job in the writer's room right away, become a producer's assistant or get a job in the production office so that you get to know producers, because they're the ones that can get you in the writing room. I have a whole talk on my YouTube channel called Strategizing Screenwriting Competitions. Highly recommend. This is how I'm breaking into writing as a 51-year-old, is winning competitions. If you keep winning writing contests, finally, so I've been invited to all kinds of, I'm being shopped now as a writer. Never ever thought that I would ever be shopped as a writer. And when I say that, I mean, I'm being put in front of big managers and production companies, et cetera. And so I know that that's going to happen for me. I'm going to probably sign with someone this year as a 51-year-old. If I knew what I know now when I was your age, I would have been entering contests as a youngster. I would have been, I loved my career as a script supervisor, like loved it, because it gave me a lot of financial freedom. It was, At a certain point in my 30s, I started to cut back on my hours. And it really, especially when I had the cancer scare. So when you work as a film technician and you're a key, you are making 20,000 a month, right? Between 10 and 20,000 a month. I was at the 20,000 a month mark for a very long time. So what that means is you don't have to work all year. You can work 6 months and have a very nice lifestyle, even in a very expensive city like Toronto, right? And so for me personally, because I have this like duality of this super creative side and then my practical side for my creativity, I was a stand-up comic for 8 years. I am a member of ACTRA. I was an actor, but I was actively acting from 2004 to 2010. And I started to write around that time as well. And I started to teach. These are all, and teaching doesn't sound creative, but it's super creative. It's super creative. And what I learned this year during the pandemic is that business is super creative. I teach a whole program called Coffee Break MBA that teaches people, teaches artists specifically how to make money online. If I knew how creative business was, I would have started that whole thing in my 20s. Although in my 20s, to be fair, the internet didn't even exist. So I wouldn't have had the choice to do it that way. But, I would have started when I could have started if I knew. I never knew. I had all these judgments about money and about, I skipped over my point about when you start to see these big checks rolling in, if you're not experienced at handling money, which a lot of poor kids like me were not. Like my parents never taught me about money. Are you kidding? I didn't have like a trust fund, or my parents weren't investing. So I blew all my money. I've owned a couple of condos in my life, but had to sell them because I got in over my head with expenses. So I'm not that horrible with money anymore, but for most of my career I was. And so I blew through a lot of money. If I was wiser, so if I had put aside money from my, my big paychecks, like they were huge. By the time 1997 hit and I was in IATSE, I was doing huge movies. Oh, I did My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which was technically a low budget, but that exploded my career into all these like very, very high paying, Three to Tango, which is a movie you probably didn't remember. Huge, huge payday for me. The Boondock Saints, again, low budget, but it was a pretty big payday. Any sort of big movie that started to come to town would call me. And then I got into television. I didn't know I was going to work in television, but it ended up, I did Soul Food and I loved it. I did 4 seasons of that. And I did 4 seasons of Suits and Covert Affairs. There's something about television. Television pays less, by the way. So a good check in television is between 3,500 and 4,000 a week in the union world. And in features, it's 5,000 or more, right? So there is a big pay gap. You got to know that too. So you also have to, I never wanted anyone to pigeonhole me as feature or TV because there's waves. The way that there's waves of work when it's all television, and there's waves of work when it's all features. So I always went back and forth like that. It was always my thing. No one could ever say, except me, who I was. So now I'm retiring out of script supervision after 30 years. But for many years, I was saying, I'm a comedy feature script supervisor because that's the space I loved to work in. Comedy script supervision is much harder than drama, but it was a space that made me happy. Laughing on set, working with some of, the most amazing comedy. I worked with Greg Daniels and Paul Feig and like some of my really favorite directors I got to work closely with. Comedy. So that was my jam. You won't know your jam. You might know your jam already. You might not. I think I learned it on My Big Fat Greek Wedding, actually, that I loved comedy. On that movie, we were laughing every day. And it felt like it didn't feel like work, even though it's technically harder work than drama. It didn't feel like work. So I found my bliss. Once you find your thing that you love, you can start to balance it out with stuff like your creative dreams. So, balance out that paycheck. Don't like go crazy like I did. Someone actually did give me a talk. Midiana Dara is an experimental feature filmmaker. I want to buy my soul back from the I don't know what the NSLSC is, but yes, you kind of student loans. Oh, okay. It was called OSAP for us. Is it still called OSAP? It was called OSAP for us in the 90s, the student loan. I think I spent, the first 3 years, not even able to pay really a penny of my student loans. And the first union job, boom, all gone. But, then I started going, okay, well, I deserve a massage every week. I deserve, you start to do that. And Mitty took me aside. I think hers was the second feature I ever script supervised. And Mitty took me aside and said, you're really good at this job, which means you're going to be getting a lot of money soon and pretty quickly, because script supervisors, it's a position that's in demand. If you can do it, you're working. And so she said, I just want to warn you, because she used to be a camera assistant. She was a union camera assistant. She said, I want to warn you not to give up on your dreams. Something that I should have listened to her sooner on, and keep making movies. If you want to make movies, keep making movies. If you want to write movies, keep writing movies or TV or whatever you want to write. And she said, and don't spend all your money. Don't blow all that money on yourself, because you're so exhausted from your crazy work hours that you're like, I'm just going to live it up this weekend and go to the spa and eat at the most expensive restaurants. That's basically how I got through my 20s. And I warn you guys to be more sensible about that, because I don't know when, but the wave is going to come down again. It'll go back up, but be prepared for that moment when the industry takes a dip. Now, the industry did take a dip during COVID, and not for long. We had 2 months of shutdown, and then people kept working all the way through. So we had that 2-month dip this year. I'm talking about, like, be ready for a 6-month dip or even a 1-year dip. I was working during SARS, which wasn't a big thing in Toronto, but it was a huge thing because we were blacklisted from all the Hollywood refused to shoot here during SARS. So that was around 2003. Most of my students and myself, we were getting work in other countries during that time. So that's another hot tip. If the dip goes down in your province, there's work. Film is international. I've worked in 11 countries myself. Now I'm legally allowed to work in Europe, and I've been permitted to work in the United States 4 times. And of course, you can work anywhere in Canada. But keep in mind, productions will do the work of getting you the work permit, and there's work in other countries. When I shot in Malta, they didn't even care if we had work permits. Most of the crew was from Quebec. I was legally allowed to work in Europe, but most of them were not. But that didn't stop them. Malta's like, come on in, you're making a movie, please be welcome. So yes, film that's another thing. Don't be so Toronto centric, because Toronto may feel like the center of the universe, but it's not necessarily the center of the universe. So when the work dies down here, or when you have an opportunity, let's say to direct something, or to be a shadow for a director in Calgary or anywhere else where there happens to be some work, go for it. Go there, do it. That was part of the joy of my 30 years is all that work I did in other countries. Okay, just want to make sure I didn't leave anything out before we start getting into Q&As. So yeah, don't volunteer too long. That's a big important note, especially now when we're up here. By the way, there are really brilliant art films that get made. Like, I had a student, I trained directors as well. I had a directing student who was in the same class with my script supervisors. And because there's one course that I teach both of them called Am I Covered? It's all about eye lines and axis. And, directors take that course, and script, we both have to know it. We have to know it as as script supervisors, we have to know the director's job, the editor's job, and the writer's job. And we have to know enough about acting that we can interact with the actors. So it's it's a lot, right? So the director was in this class with my script supervisors, and she stood up and said, I got $150,000 grant from Telefilm to make a feature. I'm shooting it in Portugal this summer, and I'm bringing the whole crew. I've decided the way that we can make our budget is if everybody from the PA to the DOP makes $150 Canadian a day, I'll fly them out, I'll put them up. So and that's golden. If you know that a feature film has that micro budget, right? And the director is being super honest and saying everybody's making the same rate. I don't care what you do. That's called favored nations. If it's favored nations, is everybody's making the highest rate anyone else is making, which means you're making the same rate. And then one of my script students went with her to Portugal, and they made the movie. So like, I'm not saying to turn stuff like that down. By all means, that stuff, I had another student, one of her earliest script supervision jobs was a really low budget movie called 1 Week, which was Joshua Jackson going across Canada on a motorcycle. So that made her career as a script supervisor, just like My Big Fat Greek Wedding really made my career as a script supervisor. You might do a film when I got offered that job, I was also offered a Sylvester Stallone movie called Avenging Angelo for 3 times the money. But I went with my heart on the script that I wanted to work on because it made me laugh. So that was Greek Wedding, of course. And that made my career, because taking a pay cut for that one movie, which of course became an international hit, I was then one of the first choices people would call when they were doing a romantic comedy or a comedy of any kind. So yeah, don't give up on your dreams. Don't volunteer for too long. When you do make your money, save your money. Some of it. Do treat yourself. I'll send you guys that other talk if you want, and it comes with a worksheet of like how it's for to do every single year of what the areas of your life that you can focus on every year, your financials, like the kind of help you need around the house. I always need a housekeeper and a masseuse in my life. So I make sure I budget for the things I actually need. What gives you joy? For me, I need travel. So I'll send you guys that if you're interested. It's just something I started to do in my 30s that I wish I started to do in my 20s. What else? Yes, if you are trying to get into a writer's room, the fastest way in is as a story department coordinator, or by winning contests, or by being a producer's assistant. Did I miss anything? Yeah, don't get stuck in the PA trap. Don't feel like you have to PA to become anything else, but obviously do it if it's an opportunity that will lead to other things. And keep in mind, there's multiple worlds in film. There's not just long form drama. There is some people love documentary. There's documentary, which doesn't pay as much, but can be so fulfilling. And there's lots of travel involved. There's TV, there's feature film, there's a whole indie world, that's a non-union art film indie world. And there's commercials, and there's corporate video. Some of my students and myself, when I started, we would round out our, we would take corporate video gigs to pay the rent. And, they're not as exciting, but they're still working in film and practicing your craft in a different way. And commercials pay really well, and you don't have to be in a union to work on a commercial. We can also talk about that if anyone's interested. Okay, I did get a question from Norma. We can start the Q&A. I'm sure I forgot something, but I'll remember once we start talking. You can unmute yourselves, or you can type in chat, either way. So question from Norma. Any particular places you recommend to network with other key and tech creatives? I'm self-taught, so I don't have a film school network to rely on. Well, this is a great question, whether you went to film school or not. You do have to get out there and get to know people. A lot of people start at the CFC, believe it or not. So the Canadian Film Center, I used to exclusively send my students to crew there. I was the script supervision mentor there for 10 years. I didn't do it last year. I don't know if they had a class, but normally they would call me in to time all the scripts and talk to all the directors about what they wanted in their script supervisor. And then I would match up one of my students with their filmmakers. That is a really good place to, if you're going to work, if your very first thing, whatever craft you learn, is probably going to be a student film, even now that you've graduated. And if it is, go for the best, go for the CFC, because they have professional DOPs. Usually they have professional ADs. Not always, but often. And a lot of the times those directors are being positioned to get their features made right after they graduate. So the CFC is great. There are film co-ops. So Norma, are you in Toronto? If you're whatever city you're in, there's film co-ops in every city, but just beware not to stay in the trap of just only networking within the film co-ops. So that would be Llfe in Toronto, the Liaison of Independent Filmmakers of Toronto. There's more in Montreal. There's Main Film. I'm trying to think in Toronto where I would network. I took courses at Charles Street Video. Of course, all my students network with each other. I have a thing called a private Facebook group for my alumni called Daniela's Director Whisperers, and I post jobs there, but I post script supervision jobs. The occasional other things come up, but most of my students are script supervisors, but they trained with me as script supervisors. So yeah, I would say the CFC is a hot one. If you ever volunteer at TIFF, at the Toronto International Film Festival, that's opened up some great doors for people too. I know lots of people that, they got to drive around or be the personal, assistant to Tarantino when he was in town, kind of thing, or some big directors that, not that they necessarily were able to do anything for them, but the inspiration, and then just the people they were able to network with at TIFF, the Toronto International. So if there's a big film festival where you are, that's a good place. A film co-op, a major film school, especially something like the AFI in Los Angeles. Yeah. So Norma, I don't know if you're in Toronto, but those would be my bets. There's also Women in Film and Television, of course, and BIPOC Film and TV. Organizations like that often have really great events. I definitely would recommend both of those organizations. My students have benefited a lot from BIPOC Film and TV and also from Llfe. There's chapters in most cities. Yes, no problem. Anyone else? When did you know you were ready to take on a big movie or project? Oh, Princess, what a great question. Some people jump in too early. I think so. But I mean, that saying, there's that saying in the book Outliers. I don't know who he quotes, how Malcolm Gladwell wrote that book. And he talks about the 10,000 hour rule. You're a master after 10,000 hours. Because of the number of hours involved in film, I was a master in the 90s. Like I was a master by the time I came to IATSE in 1997, just based on hours, right? But it's also a confidence thing. You just know, you've got to know. So Princess, you're studying script supervision specifically. You got to know axis and coverage pretty well. You got to be really confident in that. I was confident in that coming out of film school, but everyone comes out with different skill sets, right? With different strengths even. So some people axis and coverage takes a long time, and that's okay. Like everything is learnable in every craft. I don't care what craft. I mean, it's harder for me to light. Like I know very little about lighting, but like I think lighting is very learnable for those who really want to do it, right? All of that. Like I hate numbers. It'd be hard for me to be a production accountant, but I know tons of people making great livings as production accountants. So you know when you know, Princess. So actually I have students taking on big shows within 3 years, like a lot faster than I took on a big show, but they're doing it. So, but then again, they had me to like really like subtract all the years of learning curve. That's what taking like a course of any kind, but certainly in our field in script supervision, Princess, I'm literally shaving years off your learning curve so that you can get in there and really just hopefully it won't take longer than 3 years, but it'll take a few years to build up that confidence, depending on so many things. I had no confidence as a human being when I was in my 20s, even though I had, won that apprenticeship award and had, lots of praise. You have to believe in yourself. You have to have the actual knowledge and the experience, and that it just comes with a little bit of time and effort. And it's not going to take long, I don't think, but you'll know when you know. I don't know if that answers your question. What are some script competitions you'd recommend for a writer? What's a good rate to charge someone for a show development as its concept? Okay, so Watch My Scripts competitions chalk for the full list. Obviously, the Nichols Fellowship is the one put on by the Academy. Austin screenwriting, any screencraft writing competition is great. Stage 32 has some pipeline. I go through it all in that talk, but yeah, you're right. Like go for the reputable ones. Don't just join any competition because it costs money to enter them too. So you want to be strategic. I go deep into it in that talk. It's on my YouTube channel, which is just Llfe Sione. Okay. And what's a good rate to charge someone for show development? So you're saying to charge someone to develop your show? That's not really how it works. So,
No. Sorry.
Tell me what.
I mean, like I'm consulting someone with their show. So they sent me like their script, and I've kind of been giving them feedback on their story and their pilot episode. So just
great. So you're script consulting and or story editing, depending on if you're doing any actual writing. Are you doing any actual writing?
Yes. Well,
okay.
Not really. I mean, he just sends me his work. I kind of tell him this is what you need to do, and then he sends it to me, and sometimes I make notes and everything. Yeah.
Okay, so you're doing one of the jobs I do, which is script consulting. This is a very interesting conversation because I had someone in Vancouver contact me. She posted on In Canada, I'm a story editor, and I hit like because I'm a story editor, and she said, "Oh, can I offer you my services?" And I was like, "No, I'm a story editor. I have a whole network of story editors that I recommend people to, and all of that." So we had a conversation because she was way undercharging for her work. So don't undercharge for your work. So there's no set rate. So you can set your own rate.
I think that because this is the first time I'm doing it as a paid gig, like I've done it for free so many times, and I'm like, okay, I just want to kind of build more of a reputation getting paid. So I knew I was undercharging. I didn't know it was like significantly undercharging, but I feel like I'm okay to take that loss for now as I'm like building and getting more experience with it.
Yes, and you want to get testimonials. So you want your clients to speak about you so that you can put it on like a web page, or even just like sometimes people need, most of our jobs as story editors are word of mouth and script consultants. Someone had a great experience and they recommend you to a friend, some of my business students are story editors and they're putting up pages and stuff. So sometimes you have to strategize how you get your clients, but for now, yeah, it's the testimonials that are your gold. So you're doing the right thing. But just know, if someone, people would, because people will take it. Listen, this is the other reality. People will take advantage of us as writers, as directors. I don't want to get into really horrible things that happened to me, but some pretty horrible things happened to me in terms of, contracting me out of my own idea. Anyway, those things might happen. You have to get everything you can in writing. And even when you get things in writing, you can be written right out of your own your own ownership of your own ideas. So that's the other thing to know. For those of us who are creatives, we write or we make films. We own there are ideas. Don't let other people claim ownership over them, and just be careful in those worlds. Okay, do you need a big curriculum to start working as a script supervisor? Raquel, curriculum is a word that I hear in Europe, like a CV. Raquel, where are you from? But yes, no, you don't at all. You can start as a script super. So in fact, my students who are here and will tell you, I don't know if Phoebe if she started work yet, but because she's in Calgary, but my students very often finish the course and start working the next day. They just want to know that you know the job, because it's a very hard job, right? So if you're trained, that's usually what they want to know. And if you're trained by the best, I unabashedly say that, because it's true, I have the best script supervision program in the world. The closest to me is Randy Feldman in LA and Don Gilliam in LA. We're the three best script supervision teachers in the world. Unabashedly say that, because all three of us have huge results for our students. For many years, I've been training script supervisors since 1995, and I've built so many six-figure careers. So yeah, unabashedly, I say you can start working right after you train, as long as you train with someone reputable. Now, I never had any training. I started working. So that is also possible. It just means your learning curve will be a little bit longer by a few years probably, but it is all learnable. Everything is learnable, even an insane job like script supervision. So no, you can start right away. So if you're given the choice to be a PA or a script supervisor, be a script supervisor. I mean, you're going to be overwhelmed if you haven't had the training, but if someone gives you the choice between starting as a key of a department or like the lowest rung on the totem pole, and I mean, you have to know that you have the aptitude for it. Not everyone has the aptitude for script supervision, right? So you probably don't want to take it without knowing what it is. It could be overwhelming, but if someone offers you to be a DOP on a movie, let's say so I'm giving you this example because I was reminded that I worked with Guy Godfrey, who's a big, big DOP in Canada. I was looking at an old clip of me acting in a York student film in 2004. And I saw the credits and it said that Guy was our camera trainee. And I remember talking to him as an actress, and he had the clapper in his hand, and he became like Canada's foremost indie DOP, right? Guy Godfrey. So he was working his way up and soon realized, I just got to shoot stuff. So if you're given the opportunity to volunteer to direct something or get paid like even $200 or $300 a day on a non-union set in like a PA role, take the volunteer directing gig. It's going to be worth more to you in the long run. If you can absolutely afford to do that. Some things are worth more to you in the long run. Yeah. And being a key is worth more than being a PA. As long as it doesn't, listen, people can freak out in certain jobs but then you learn, okay, I don't do that job. But if you can train, Raquel, you can start right away. Okay. like immediately. It's one of those jobs that's always in demand. Great, no problem, Princess. And Melissa, how long should it be before we join a union, or is it after a certain amount of credits gained? So Melissa, different unions have different hour requirements. I actually don't know the hour requirement. I think it's 400 hours for IATSE. I don't know what it is for NABET. Depends what union you're looking at. It'll say right on the website. Now, the truth is, in some departments, it's really not about those minimum hours. It's actually about the credits on your resume. If you have about 6 indie features, because you can have a lot of short films that doesn't really count for the unions. Music videos don't really count unless you're a DOP. Music videos count, but for like crew, you want to have as many feature films, web series, maybe non-union TV series, almost impossible, but they do exist, especially up in Northern Ontario, but long form credits, right? So a volunteering on a feature is worth more to you in terms of the long-term credit value of that when you apply to a union than getting paid a few days on a short. So think you have to weigh all that stuff out. So there's not like a definitive answer to that, but on average, I see my script supervision students, it takes them about 3 years. If you want to get into the Directors Guild of Canada as a trainee AD, you can probably get in right out of film school if you pay the fee and you need like, I don't know how many letters they ask for. Does anyone know? It might be 3 letters of, I know I've written letters of recommendation for people. I think they have to get a certain number, 3. If anyone knows, put it in the chat. But you can probably get into the DGC fairly quickly out of film school. In terms of IATSE, if you know people, you can probably get in as a permit within a couple of years. And as a member, unless like your mom and dad and grandfather were in IATSE, it will take at least 3 years usually. Now, that's not true. I have had students who've gotten in just over a year, right before the pandemic, but they're the exception and not the rule. So yeah, you want to budget your time and money and all of that, right? And really be strategic about the work you take and really try to negotiate. There's a myth that you can't really negotiate as a non-union person without a lot of credits, and that's not true. I've been trying for the past few years to get my non-union, my students who are still in the non-union world to agree on a minimum rate, and we're trying to, and it's been, they've largely been able to go there where you don't work for less than 350 a day. Because I was hearing stories of people working for 200 a day as a script supervisor, when I was working for 300 a day in the 1990s. So it didn't make any sense to me that this industry would be going backwards. So they were largely able to get it. Now, some non-union shows can pay keys up to 500 a day. So it's in that range, right? Of course, there's going to be some that pay a lot less just because of the reality of their budget, but you can say no to those. What I found is if you keep saying yes to freebies or $200 day jobs, you're going to keep getting offered those jobs. So don't fall into that trap. Jesse, would it be a good idea to offer free story editing just to get those first few testimonials? Because I found it harder and harder to show I have knowledge of story development without credits. Well, Jess, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you are clear with your people that you're doing it for the testimonials. So you don't want to work for free and then not get it. I mean, unless they really didn't work well with you, then of course they don't have to give you a testimonial, but say, if you're satisfied with my work, all that I ask is that you give me a testimonial at the end. Make it, be upfront about it. If that's what you're doing it for. I mean, I find story editing is really, it's hard work, right? It's not, it's work we can do at home. So that's one thing, but it is a lot of brain work, and a lot of our creativity goes into it. So don't undersell yourself. So I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it for free at first. Just don't do that for very long, and be very clear with people. Brazil. Oh, Raquel, you're in Brazil. Raquel, did you write to me from Sao Paulo? I can't remember. I had someone write to me from Sao Paulo like a month ago, and I forgot. Anyway, but that person was already working as a script supervisor, so maybe that wasn't you. Welcome. I love that you're tuning in from Brazil. Roman, what do you think is a good idea for the future director to get an internship in NABET as a grip first and then apply to the DGC when I get my your permanent residency because you're an international student? So here's a tip, Roman. Getting into the DGC is not necessarily the fastest way to directing. So any people who think they can work their way up in the directing department as like a PA, third AD, second AD, first AD, sometimes that's a much longer road to directing. So I would say, yes, I would say build your director's reel. They need what do they need? 70 minutes minimum as a director for the DGC on non-student projects. So when you have that reel ready, definitely keep shooting and until you have enough to apply as a director rather than as a first AD. The reason I've had a number of students switch over from second AD, first AD to script supervision. Script supervision is actually the fastest paths to directing right now, especially if you're a woman or a person of color, is script supervision. It is possible to go from first AD, but it's a lot less common. Editing and camera. Those are the positions you can get to directing through. You really are probably not going to get to directing as a grip, but being a grip is an excellent way to make money to fund all the films you want to shoot. One of my favorite directors in the world started as a grip. Actually, his name is Terry McDonough, and he's a Brit. And he told me he started as a grip in 1985, and he's a brilliant director. So I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's a hard road. It's a harder road because you're not considered part of the reason script supervisors get invited to direct a lot more is we're part of the inner circle. We're part of the brain trust. So is camera. So is first AD, but first ADs get so pigeonholed. For usually if you want to be a producer, first AD or locations manager or accountant are the three fastest ways, by the way, for those who said they wanted to, oh, Phoebe, you got jobs. I'm so excited for you. Oh my God, that's great. You never we post our hallelujahs in Daniela's Director Whispers when people get jobs, but I never saw your hallelujahs. So that's good. I'm glad you got gigs. So Roman, I would go for the NABEC grip thing to make money, keep shooting. And when you have your 70 minutes or more, whatever the DGC requires, join as a director, unless you know that you want to be a first AD, Do you have an agent or do you recommend one? And a good question. I've never had an agent. This is the first time in my life I'm being shopped for a manager and an agent. So I hope that this year I will have an agent and a manager, and that's as a screenwriter. You don't need an agent for anything else except directing, acting, writing. Directing, acting, writing, you need an agent and a manager. Now, there are hair makeup people with agents, and that's actually really a good thing to have an agent in. No one else really needs an agent. Some producers have an agent if they're big producers. We basically get our work through word of mouth. So once you're on one show, it leads to another show, it leads to another show. So you do have to get out there. And that's why the first one or two are volunteer or low budget. So you're getting that, you're proving yourself, you're learning your craft, but also making the connections. But no, agent won't get you work anyway as a film technician. And you don't want to give 15% in Canada, it would be 15% of your wage. With writing agents, I'm only looking in Los Angeles. I'm not even considering any Canadian writing agents, although there are many of my friends have Canadian writing agents and they're quite happy. So even my story editing work comes to me through word of mouth. So Gregory, I want to get back to doing script after a break since I trained. Should I retrain and do I need to spend money on the software? Gregory, who did you train with? Because oh, Greg, you trained with me. Sorry, I didn't look at your last name. Greg, Greg, you trained with me, so you have lifetime access for free. So did I give you the program on Thinkific?
Yes, I think so.
Just refer to it as you need. I would do a refresher because it's been a few years. Sorry, I didn't see your last name when I said that. But Gregory, you're a director now, aren't you? Am I wrong about that?
I've made one film, but I've had I've just had it's been a lean few years, let's say.
Well,
I need to make some money. Yeah. I took a year off to do my master's and yeah.
Well, you saw in the alumni group how much work has been flying in. Most of it's been union work, oddly, but there's going to be a whole wave of non-union. Apply for that one up north too, the one in Sudbury that I just posted. Because they're going, just get your name out there. You don't have to spend money. I don't use the software. I know people are like, but you're Daniela Sayoni. You don't have to use Scripty. Eventually you might want to learn that software, but for when you start, when it matters, when let's say someone's doing a show like Star Trek, this is when it really matters. When you're at the precipice of like joining IATSE and you're a permit, and most of those, not most, but a chunk of the TV script supervisors do use that software. And if you're coming in as a daily for them instead of doing your own show, you must use Scripty because you have to conform to their system. So that's when it'll matter, but that not off the bat. Oh, you live in Rio, says Raquel. Okay, very good. And I sorry that I don't know if I said that right. Harai. I'm a bit of a left field case. I have no background in entertainment. I never did either. I'm mostly self-taught and working on my network. I'm currently in an online screenwriting program out of LA. That's great. Are you with Corey Mandel? He's my favorite teacher. That will end with producing 2 pilot samples. Oh, that's a different program. Okay, great. My worry is after all this work, not having anyone to show them to. I was wondering if you had any pointers on how to strategize networking in Toronto to get into the writer's room or work for producers and production managers. Oh, okay. I don't have, you know what, there's actually not one answer to that. So there's people I know who were producers' assistants, and through that job, they were able to get their stuff read by the producers they work for. Now that's as a courtesy. And sometimes the producers were able to help them and sometimes they weren't, right? So it really depends. That's one way. Winning contests will actually get you attention in LA, not really in Toronto. All the contests I've won, no one in Toronto seems to care, but it's in LA, they're hungry for new talent and they will do that. So getting into a writer's room in Toronto is like network and hustle. So in Canada, of course, you're in Canada. I saw you post there, is a very great way to network. But I think BIPOC Film and TV, I think, is a great. I don't know if you're someone of color, but if you're of color, that's a really good. It's a really good networking organization. They had an event this summer. It's like 8 it was something about everyone gets 8 mentors, and I participated as a mentor, and everyone I had 4 people in BIPOC coming to me with questions, and will you read this, and will you can I take your course, like all that stuff. It was great, and they had 8 of us, so not just me. So BIPOC does stuff like that for its members. It's quite wild. So I would network if you're someone of color. If you're not, what else can you do? Let's see. I mean, don't worry that you'll have no one to show it to. You'll have someone to show it to. If you're looking for an agent, they're going to read it, right? Assuming they're taking on new clients. You're going to have competitions to show it to. So you're shooting like a pilot teaser. That's what they do at the CFC for their writers. And you could apply it to CFC. You're like, I don't want to keep taking courses. I get it. My students, some of my writing students went into development with so they pitched to CTV and they got development. Another person pitched to a producer she met on in Canada, got it into development. Another of my students last year pitched to a friend of his who was a producer in LA, got his into development. It's just, you just got to keep hustling. It's all, the film business is all about the hustle, whether you're a PA or whether you're a screenwriter. But if you're a screenwriter, especially about the hustle. I don't know if I answered your question, because there's not one right answer. Like, people have gotten in all different ways. How long should we stay? This is from Melissa. How long should we stay in a non-paid intern position that takes place in a different field of the industry we trained in? So Melissa, let's say you trained as a writer, but you're interning as costumes. I don't know. I'm just making it up. Why would you be interning at costumes if you want to be a writer? That's my question. or if you want to be a writer, but you're interning as a producer, that's at least more related, because a writer producer job is much more related. Do you want to give me more specifics? Like, is it something that you like? Like, are you interning in a job that you like? Oh, it's non-paid? Leave tomorrow. So I don't know. So on my YouTube channel, there's an interview with James Hurst. And now, of course, he came out the same time I did, but he started out in kids TV knowing he didn't want to keep working in kids TV. He wanted to work in teens and young adults. Right. But he didn't care. He just wanted to get somewhere. And so his first job in kids TV, now it wasn't non-paid, it was paid. It was very low paid. It was a show called Zumba Famu and Kratz Creatures. So he did like 54 episodes of one of those shows. I can't remember which one. And he then got Degrassi. So these things can happen. It can lead you. One thing can lead to another, but he was very determined. Basically, whether he started out very low paid, he did. I remember he was really dirt poor when he started that job. By the end of the run of the 54, he was the head writer. So if there's upward mobility, if it's not paid, then that's cool. But if it's an unpaid intern in animation, let's say, and you want to work in like live action comedy, there'll be some value to it, but move on when you can find either work in comedy or paid work. You know what I mean? You will build connections, even though they might not be. I don't want you to get stuck in animation. I don't know if you're in animation. I'm just saying, if you were in animation, I wouldn't want you to get stuck there if that's not where you wanted to be, because it's very, very easy for women, especially, to get stuck in animation and documentary and reality. This is a thing from when I came up in the business. I always say, I've seen some shit. I saw people pigeonhole women into documentary, reality and factual, and animation, as if women couldn't write drama or comedy, because that's where the real money was. So I don't want you to get stuck, is what I'm trying to say, especially if it's not where you want to be. But use what you can. Oh, someone said they grew up with Zumba. Oh, great. Yes, great. I'm glad you're doing the hustle. I was going to say that hit me right in the childhood. I've never seen it. I just remember when Jamie, sorry, I call him Jamie because I've known him that long, but when James started working on that show. Did I get all the questions? We still have, I'm willing to stay on till 7:30 if there are more questions. There might be, I just can't scroll down. So if I missed your question or if I'm not seeing it, feel free to use the mic.
I kind of have a question about, I feel like I always talk about this, but like imposter syndrome, like
Yeah.
I am working right now and I do have a job in the industry, but I still feel like there's always an excuse as to why I feel like I'm not qualified for the job. So I'm just wondering, like, when does that go away and how do you
my writing, yes, Princess says, especially as a woman, my writing students know that a lot of big showrunners have imposter syndrome, because I talk about it in that class, about how I work so closely with huge showrunners, and these are men, these are white men with imposter syndrome. So it's real, and it's yeah, we've been, as women and as people of color, I'm not a person of color, but I know that we've been exposed to a lot of these biases over the years where that make us feel unworthy. That's on top of the general feeling of like, we can always feel unworthy because it seems like such a dream to work in the film business in any position, right? So I love that, Greg, that you went out and made your movie, and that, because I always talked myself out of making my movies. It's so you got to get past that imposter syndrome. You got to get past the idea that you don't deserve this job or that role, or that's not for you. If you want to do it, if you have the passion, you just got to do it. And that imposter, that voice in your head, it won't go away. It'll die down, though. It'll die down. The more you're able to. I had this acting teacher, really great acting teacher. I still have him, actually, John Strasberg in New York. And I always had imposter syndrome about acting. And it would freeze me up. I can be a really, really good actor, but I can freeze up when I'm in my head, right? So he would say, what is going on right now? And he'd say, like, where is that voice coming from? Point to it. And literally I went, like, I didn't even stop to think about it. There was if there was some male voice up there telling me I was a horrible actor and I didn't deserve to be acting. And he made me yell at him and tell him to fuck off. And it actually really, really helped my acting, because I realized, oh, there's this omnipresent thing I'm not seeing, which is probably related to my daddy issues, or whatever. But it's real. It's real in so many of us. And I wasn't the first actor he'd seen go through that. So whatever it is, directing, writing, acting, it's real. And imposter syndrome is my script editor, your inner saboteur. Exactly. My favorite writing teacher is Corey Mandel in LA, and he said he still struggles with that, but he struggled with that voice on his shoulder. He sold his first script to Ridley Scott, this guy, if you guys haven't studied with him. And he had that voice. It can be really debilitating. And he had a career in LA for 10 years before he quit. It's real. It's real, whether you're a woman, whether you're a man. It's this business. This business is crazy. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Like, it's exciting because anything can happen, but half the battle for a lot of you guys is going to be your self-confidence and just owning who you are and what you know. And I was a very meek and quiet little girl when I was 20. So kudos, you're already winning if you're not that person. You're already a step ahead of me. So, but you'll get there. Even if you are like me, you will get there. It's not far away. But yeah, you just got to keep going. I think people get rewarded for persistence in this business, which is a good thing. Like if you can manage to survive, my friend, I won't say who she is, but she's been directing for years and years and years, and she's finally having huge like jobs and income years where she struggled for so many years. And part of that is the industry getting woke about female directors, but part of it is her ability to persevere and just survive for 30 years, you know, as a director. So yeah, there's a lot to that. It's never going to go away. You have to, mindset is a huge thing in any field. I teach it to my business students, just money mindset, because I have so much shit like that about money, right? So money mindset is one thing, but like mindset about your ability, your confidence, your all that stuff. It's half the game. And it's learnable. And remember, there's no this is a big thing I had to learn. Failure is okay. Don't be afraid to fail, because every time you fail, you get closer to your dream. You get closer to winning. It's a big thing I learned the most. I learned it in comedy, because you learn it in stand-up. When you bomb, there's no faster way to get better as a comic, right? So I learned it in comedy first, but I learned it in business. The more mistakes you make, the closer you are to finding the right thing that is going to make all the difference for your business. So it's the same with anything creative is there's no such thing as failure really, because it's all contributing to your future success. If you're not making mistakes, you're not moving forward is what I'm trying to say sort of with that.
I have one more question, and this one is kind of like a bit more specific. So I'm wondering, like, because you're essentially like a freelancer, are there times where you are covered under like benefits and insurance? And then what happens in the in-between phases when you're going between jobs? Like, does it kind of cross over from one job to another, or
when you're in a union? So I'm in 3 unions. I'm in ACTRA, IATSE 873, and the Writers Guild of Canada. So I've been covered all my career. So with a lot of those unions, like the WGC and ACTRA are unions where, and I think the DGC as well, you get covered only by how much you work. So so with IATSE, you're just covered, right? So if you become a film, if benefits are really important to you and you can work as a film technician for part of the year, I would join NABET or IATSE, because you'll have those benefits. It's just a given in those unions, right? And but in ACTRA and WGC, you get more benefits. You get a basic minimum coverage, like a death benefit and a sickness. There's so much, and you can buy into your benefits. So you can also buy a plan. Once I leave IATSE, I'm not going to have that kind of health coverage. So I have to earn those earn it through writing. And if I don't, I would get like a Blue Cross plan or some kind of plan that gives me, you know, just like Obamacare. Obamacare is what, $1,100 a month US for Americans. We'd have a cheaper version of that in Canada, because in film you're going to need a good doctor, and you're going to need, like, you know, the best specialist, because, you know, if you get sick when you're in film, it's a lot. You're going to get sick because it's really an intense lifestyle. Did I help people with this talk? Did I leave you with more questions or fears? Or you can be more strategic than you think. You have more control than you think. You have the power to say no. That was a big lesson I had to learn. You don't have to say yes to everything. In fact, saying no, and let me tell you this story because I tell it in my Negotiating Your Deal talk. So some of you were at that talk who are my script students. At one point in 2014, I found out, because, by the way, whatever job you do, whether it's script supervision or anything else, talk to everyone around you who does the same job and find out what everybody's making, what they're getting as a kit rental, what they're getting, you know, for camera bumps or any other thing that affects your job, and your day rate, of course. And I found out in 2014 that I was the lowest paid script supervisor in Toronto, and I had done 4 seasons of Suits by that point. And I was really shocked to hear what I wasn't making compared to a lot of people who were junior to me. Some of my own students were making more than me. So I had to really reassess and decide that I was going to say no until people started to pay me what I was worth. So I said no. I walked away from Suits. I said no to a lot of gigs after that, unless they would pay me feature film rate. If it was a TV show, I'd be like, pay me feature film rate. And this is, my feature film rate was above scale. Suddenly, guess what happened? I got more and better quality work than I've ever had in my life. I started to get oh, she's not available. Well, maybe this movie, maybe we can get her on this movie. It's Shazam. So I got to do Shazam. I got to do Triple X3. I got to do like these massive blockbuster films that normally I would not have been offered, because I spent a few months, really no more than 2 months, saying no to everybody because nobody had a good enough offer for me. And my give a damn was busted. I'm like, I'm not sacrificing my life and my health and my time. And I wish I'd had that attitude in my 20s. Not I actually did say no a lot in my 20s. I used to say no to very big multi-camera shows where they wouldn't pay a camera bump because there are a lot of extra work for the script supervisor. So yeah. If any of you are interested, I train directors in coverage. I train script supervisors from scratch to being able to work on the job. Greg, if you don't have my Thinkific, let me know. You get it for life. So you've already trained with me, so you get it for life. If you are interested in learning a side hustle to make money online, I teach Coffee Break MBA. My courses are all extremely affordable in regards to all the other courses in the marketplace. Roman, one more question. What do you think about the film industry in Canada? A lot of movies are coming from the US, and even if they are shot in Canada, most of the keys are writers, directors, DOP, took it by Americans. That's right. Does it make sense to think about how to get DGA, or it can change? Yes, absolutely. I know so many Canadians who got their DGA card before they got their DGC card. And can it change? It's funny. Most of the work that I talk about as a film technician, I work for big US producers. So not since the 90s have I really worked in the Canadian industry. So when I was indie and non-union, it was a lot of Canadian stuff. And that was fine. Like it was fine. It's just a different world. It's a different money wise. It's different. They're both great worlds. It's not, Canada's changing. If you hear my talk with James, there's a lot fewer jobs for writers in Canada than there used to be in TV. So for writers, I would say also look in the US. There's fewer jobs I'd say there's more jobs for Canadian directors now in TV. And more American shows, at least through the pandemic, we're starting to hire more Canadians. So I think that's changing for the better. But for writers, we got to look south of the border. Melissa, I cut it earlier, so I don't know if this was asked. When we are trying to set our own rates as story editors or script consultants, is there somewhere we can check what the average rate is set at? So for TV story editors, there is a minimum rate set out in the WGC. So you can go to wgc.ca and there's different contracts, but go to the main IPA. I can't even remember what it is for TV because I story edit features where you set your own rate. So it'll just say negotiable there. But just the best thing to do always is ask other people who are doing what you do. And what is it? All boats rise together. We all started making a lot more money as script supervisors when we stuck together and compared our rates, whether we're union or non-union, and realize if we all decide to work below a certain rate. So this happened for real. At IATSE, all the key rates for all the keys are a certain rate. So let's say the average would be about $35 an hour for TV, right? Which is like the lower budget world. As script supervisors, TV is actually much harder for us and we're one of the only departments dealing with showrunners. So we all said, we're not working for 35 an hour. So we have a floor of 40 an hour at IATSE, and it's not in the contract. It's what we all agreed on. So anytime a script supervisor is called, they'll say, yeah, it'll either be 40 or above. No one will go below that. And we all started getting paid that. So when you stick together, the production managers hear it over and over again, and they know to budget for that. And it's starting to work in the non-union world with the 350 floor, I've actually had directors send me, some of you have seen it who are in my alumni group. They'll send me a gig list saying, sorry, I can only pay 350. So they know that it's low and they're apologizing for that, which is awesome. I have to head out, but thank you, Daniela. It was super helpful. I will definitely keep an eye out for the next one. Yeah, if you guys have any topics you want me to talk about, I'm always happy to. It's almost 7:30, so I am going to head out. You guys know if you're interested in any of my courses, or even if you have a question or a suggestion for a talk, I can't always answer it. Like I'm about to go on set for 3 weeks. Hopefully I don't. I'm trying to cover. I was helping someone out, but if I'm on set for 3 weeks, it's going to be harder for me to answer. But in general, mondocinema@gmail.com. mondocinema@gmail.com. I will email everyone who was registered for my talk on work-life balance in the film industry, because I think it's important. and with that form to help you sort of strategize your year ahead every single year. Good luck out there. It's actually great. You're graduating at the best time. Yes, there's work. There's openness to diversity. There's less sexism than there's ever been. You know, if wherever you are is not busy, another town will be. So look for work over there. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your night.